big power line blow up back there.
We're still not in the eye yet.
Oh, it's a alarm.
It's gonna pass right on top of us. I am at
the power zone.
Gallliano. The eyeball will go right over this town.
We're still an hour or so away from the really bad conditions.
Which is just
We didn't get through this tree.
That's why I put Golden Meadow, Louisiana, as the reference point, because that other town is a little bitty bump in the road just north of Golden Meadow, Louisiana, just north of Grand Isle.
Don't fall on me, please. Thank you.
I am in a Jeep Liberty modified, very heavily modified.
Galliano. He's in Galliano.
Oh my goodness. They are? Are they still in this vicinity?
Oh, sorry.
Are they still here or did they evacuate?
Fire department service has been suspended here in Houma.
Good. They evacuated. Oh, shoot. That's not good.
No, I haven't seen anybody in 5 years, 6 years. Pure dedication to storm chasing. That's it.
Yeah, I'm running on cell service.
Helmet up.
Oh my goodness, they stayed. When this is over,
Just one way? Yeah, one way.
send me their information. I'm gonna go check on them.
Is that the east option? Is that the east option?
Teresa, send me their information and I'm gonna go check on them.
We've already gone that way. What?
All right, folks, getting a lot of questions now again about what the weather expectations are for East Alabama and West Georgia, because we serve East Alabama and West Georgia. Just for a brief moment of time here, I'll tell you that we're expecting absolutely
If I
nothing
keep moving, then I
like
get
this,
better
for
airflow.
the most part.
These trees are going to be an issue here.
East Alabama and West Georgia will be spared from this storm because of high pressure setting off the Atlantic coast. That is what has pushed this storm further west. But these feeder bands that you see spiraling in off the Gulf of Mexico that's causing severe weather along the Alabama and Florida panhandle, the Alabama Gulf Coast and the Florida panhandle, those feeder bands will eventually make it up into East Alabama and West Georgia. The prime opportunity for that to happen will be Monday afternoon through Tuesday afternoon, and during that time period we could have periods of tropical downpours, just like what you see coming in on shore here.
Charles went back to Morgan City.
Pensacola. That's the kind of stuff we would expect to see across East Alabama and West Georgia tomorrow afternoon and continuing until Tuesday afternoon. Some of those storms could produce very heavy rainfall for short periods of time, and they also could produce strong to severe thunderstorms, and some of those strong and severe thunderstorms could produce quick, small, spin-up tornadoes. So to answer all of those questions about what to expect in East Alabama and West Georgia, And really, this applies to all of Alabama east of I-65 and all of West Georgia, basically west of Atlanta Metro down to about Macon and west. This is what we can expect. The further east you go, the further you get away from the storm, the less effects you're going to see. The further west you go, the closer you're going to get to the storm and the more effects you're going to see. West of I-65 in Alabama, you get over there by the Alabama-Mississippi state line, then you're going to see a lot more rain. You're going to see a lot more wind. You're going to see a higher risk of tornadoes and severe thunderstorms.
Dangerous zone right here.
Hurricane or tropical storm force winds, not a deal for East Alabama. We're not going to see anything of that magnitude. But these quick downpours and gusty winds associated with thunderstorms and potential spin-up tornadoes will be a real thing, I think, tomorrow afternoon through Tuesday afternoon across East Alabama and West Georgia. You're watching live video being streamed from South Louisiana. This is a point just north of Grand Isle, Louisiana this afternoon. And we're going to go back and listen. And again, I caution you, these guys are professional storm spotters and chasers, and they get a little animated from time to time. And
4:30.
Occasionally they may let one slip. This particular storm chaser, Jocko Williams, has behaved fairly well, though he has let one or two slip. So I just caution you that the language can get a little rough sometimes in the heat of the moment. I mean, he was referencing 162 mile per hour wind gust a few moments ago. Whoever he was talking to apparently was not believing what he was saying. And I'm not so sure I do, because I believe 162 miles per hour would most likely put those trees down. I don't know, though. I mean, I have to trust him for the most part because this is what he does for a living.
Yeah, it's going to be a while.
But I think 162 miles per hour is a little bit far-fetched. And I'm
it's starting to ramp up now. Let the vehicle bounce up and down a little.
From the official reports of wind gust I'm seeing on the National Weather Service chat room, both in the Baton Rouge and New Orleans chat room, also the National Hurricane chat room, have not seen any wind gust confirmed to that magnitude. Not that it couldn't have happened in that exact spot. The vehicle is oriented in such a way that the wind is not hitting the largest parts of the vehicle, and it is a modified vehicle. So there are some reasons why the vehicle hasn't flipped. An ordinary vehicle turned sideways at 162 miles per hour would take a ride, and it wouldn't be on purpose. Those trees have been there for years. They are tough. They can weather the storm. Typically, the most damage you see is from pine trees. Those are not pine trees. So there is some justification to support his reports of 162 mile per hour wind gust. Certainly, this storm is capable of that, but I don't know. Those handheld anemometers sometimes can give you false readings. So I would cautiously accept his report of 162 mile per hour wind gust. But let's go back and listen to him some more and watch as the eye of the hurricane should come right over his position there just north of Grand Isle, Louisiana.
Grand Isle, under 6 feet of water.
Hurricane
Hearing so far.
Coverage. Dr. Dodge weather, 1:29 p.m. Central on your Sunday afternoon.
From a side wind, it takes a lot less than if the wind is down the length. That's why I try to keep it pointed into the wind. And firefighters have suspended rescue efforts here in Houma. Yeah, these lines are bouncing all over the place.
Okay, we've temporarily
Radio
lost
tower,
his audio.
cell phone
I
tower's
think
probably
he
gonna come
probably
down
turned
eventually,
it down
too.
because he had a wheel alert coming in. And that most likely
We are
that
in Houma
most
right now.
likely is an extreme wind warning. That was just issued
We're
by
still
the
a ways
National
out
Hurricane Center.
from the
He puts
worst,
his
and trust me,
audio
it
back
ramps up exponentially.
Conditions appear to be worsening right there at his location. I know the rain is. And that outer wall is getting awfully close to him. Questions about the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, Bay St. Louis, Biloxi, that area, what are they experiencing? Well, they're not getting anything like
Sheet metal.
this, but it's not a walk in the park over there in Mississippi either. We've got some extremely strong thunderstorms coming on shore right there around Biloxi. Oh, we just lost the feed. We saw his vehicle rocking just before
Northeast
we lost
release,
the feed.
100 in the eye.
I hope that Jocko is okay, but his vehicle may have just rolled over. Oh, we're back. We got him back. Good. That was scary. We got his audio back
He
too.
was my radio. I've been through 4 or 5 eye walls. Last year I was in Laura, Sally, Delta, Zeta. I think there's another one.
Guys.
Very strong gusts coming in.
You can keep it for now.
Whoa!
Okay. Whoa! Open that at the wrong time. I lost it. It's boxing me in. Box him in. It's coming in hot. Surginators are getting offshore flow right now. You're gonna have to activate one of these phones. Start shooting B-roll too.
Right, the green. Wait till that damn eye, brother.
gusts. We've had a few gusts probably up around 90 to 95 miles an hour. This is really kind of just the beginning. After this band moves through the outer eye wall, we're going to go what we call through a moat, which is kind of a calm area. It's not the eye. It's a calm area, and I'm using quotation marks that you can't see.
Because the winds are still high.
Yeah, the winds are
But the
still...
precipitation...
There's no precipitation, but the winds are still very strong. And then it'll be time for the inner eye wall, and that's your most powerful part of the hurricane. And we fully expect Ida to still be a Category 4 hurricane by the time it gets to us here in Lockport. So we fully expect in that inner eye wall to experience winds well in excess of 125 miles an hour. Really strong go. Oh, wow. That gust just buffered the vehicle. That's wild. Like I was saying, when we get to that inner eye wall, I fully expect to have a few gusts in excess of 140 miles an hour.
Oh yeah, lots of debris. The tree. Maybe start to switch a little here. Back up a tad. So we're out of the angle of that debris. Kind of in a little lull spot right here. Strong band incoming, or strong wind gust. Venture. I'm gonna pull over here to where Brandy can take you. I want to be in these mobile homes for a little bit.
stop. We had some pretty big shingles flying at us. Water coming up the sewer.
Wow, that was a huge gust. Here's the really bad stuff. It's right here. This stuff right here is over 100 miles an hour. And if you loop it, it's trying to build a loop, but the internet's almost out here, guys. There it goes. It's trying. There we go. It's trying to loop it.
Shingle.
Looks like the inner eye wall is even expanding a little.
Yeah.
We're right on track to get that northeast corner.
Here. It's not just ripping off part of a roof. Got a dumpster getting ready to fly through the parking lot here. I'm going to back up. Hang on, I'm going to start moving. Things are getting way more interesting now. Okay, yeah. Gotta get in a different position. I don't want to go around him. There's that car wash. Look what happened there. And the winds get higher and higher. The winds will just accelerate and everything becomes flying debris. Everything, right? It's gonna get much, much worse. Wow. Whoa. Uh-oh, look at everything in front of me, guys. God, the lines are I got to stay back just far enough I don't get any debris hit by the poles or the signs coming apart. Uh-oh, uh-oh, it's about to go. It's about to go. God, look at the lines. They're bouncing like crazy. I'm gonna roll the window down so you can hear the wind screaming. I don't know which is going to go first, that telephone pole, that sign, or I'm going to back up here, where the telephone poles are bouncing really hard now. They're swaying off to the east. Winds above the surface are over 100 miles an hour now at about 2,000 feet. About 2,000 feet. The winds are well over 100 miles an hour above my head now, out of the east-northeast. All the roads south of me are becoming impassable. Roads are blocked. It says trees and roofs off buildings south of me now, about 20 miles. That line. Except for Kathy real quick. This is Matthews, Louisiana. Hurricane Ida is approaching. We're just north of 20 miles, winds 80, gusts to 100. The 120 to 150 mile an hour winds are coming north. Be here within the hour. And there's massive damage south of me from Grand Isles all the way to just south of this location right here at Lockport and Matthews. Major damage is underway at this time. Trying to get a couple clips out to Kathy real quick before the power goes out. Wow. Okay. Okay, guys. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's fine looking. There we go. Wow. Can you guys hear can you guys hear the horrible roar outside? Yeah, I'm feeling fine, guys. Just gotta stay super focused on what's coming. You guys stay really, really focused on all the debris and stuff flying. Just right on that. Gotta keep watching it. Watch this. Here it is. Okay, we're right up here, up in this area. Here's the band. You saw that burn just near and maybe over Homa.
It's hardly moving though.
Starting to get close to popping. I have to yawn. Once you get started getting close to that eye where the lowest central pressure is, your ears gradually start to pop. You kind of yawn to self-pop your ears, and it almost feels like that a little annoying feeling when you're on an airplane and you have to pop your ears.
We just got hit by something.
Yeah?
Yep.
Oh, from that.
Yeah, the roof next to us is starting to come apart.
Okay. Time to,
Yep, here come more pieces. Whee!
I gotta say, I'm impressed with the snap design.
oh, me too.
Hang on. pretty impressive.
Basically almost coming across the road, right?
Parishes, it's about 60% for Terrebonne Parish, just about a third for La Roche Parish, a third for St. Charles, about a third for Jefferson Parish, third for Orleans, obviously Jefferson and Orleans being part of the New Orleans metro area. About 85% of Plaquemines Parish is now without power with 10,000, almost 10,700 there.
Infrared.
St.
Still pulling in
Tammany,
Gulf water.
Well, it's still just sitting there over that
5%
marsh.
there.
Yep.
8,800 outages. And
I guess with the rise of water, it's still plenty warm.
About 8% out of power. Ascension Parish just about 9% without power.
I wouldn't say it's probably
And
not
Iberville
strengthening, it's
Parish
probably just
also about
maintaining
10%
itself.
of the customers
Yeah.
without power.
Thank you for that, Tim. Looking back once again at the latest radar imagery, storm's not going to give up without a fight.
Current sensor out with the National Hurricane Center update is out. They're going with 145 mile-an-hour winds. Pressure down to pressure at 934 millibars. Moving northwest at 12 miles per hour. As of the 2 p.m. Central Standard Time 19 ETC information, and it's currently ever located at 29.3 degrees north, 90.4 degrees west, or about 25 miles west-northwest of Grand 5 miles southeast of Beaumont.
We'll pick up all of the nuts and bolts of that update in a few minutes. We're going to go to a break now.
That one has some lift.
On the other side, we'll have more coverage of the storm as it moves fully inland. And of course, reports on the ground as they come in. I'm sure they will continue to mount up an extremely dangerous storm, catastrophic. If you haven't evacuated, you need to stay inside.
police officer from Lockport actually messaged me. He's like, they can't get out your mobile right now. I just wanted to see what's going on. Yeah, message me on TI. Well, let's go down the road a bit. That's the siding coming off over here. Pull us around where?
This roof is completely off over here.
Okay. Widespread damage really becoming a thing here in Lockport. Back up from that overhang.
Yeah.
please make it your business to stay there until the danger passes. And because of the possibility that severe winds will damage your home, it is a good idea to have a mattress nearby that you can use to put over yourself and other family members to protect you from any falling debris. We urge you not to be tempted to go outside, to take a look and start sightseeing, and for goodness sake, don't drive around right now. It just isn't worth it. The same really goes by for the immediate aftermath of the storm after it's passed by, because there will be down power lines, there's going to be standing water, there's going to be debris, other dangers, and quite frankly, we can't tell you yet how soon it will be before first responders are going to be able to respond to calls for assistance. So please don't go out. And the extent to which individuals decide to get out and about will inhibit the flow of first responders and search and rescue assets, high water vehicles, and so forth. So please be patient. Once the storm has passed, you need to be prepared to shelter in place for the first 72 hours. We have every possible resource ready to go to help you. We'll get there sooner than 72 hours, if at all possible, in order to rescue people across the state of Louisiana. But this is the window of time that it may take in order to get first responders to you, depending upon conditions. You should know that the entirety of the Louisiana National Guard has been activated, and currently more than 4,900 guardsmen are out in support of current operations. Just on the search and rescue assets of the National Guard, they're staged across 14 parishes. They have 195 high water vehicles, 73 boats, and 34 helicopters ready to support and assist the citizens of Louisiana. There remain 169 wildlife and fishery agents with trucks and boats in the same number in order to do search and rescue. And the most robust search and rescue effort that we have consists of more than 900 individuals making up 21 teams that are represented by 16 different states. And the numbers that I just gave you include the Louisiana State Fire Marshal's Office and their boats. The Department of Transportation has assembled 164 coaches and 20 paratransit vehicles. 185 coaches will be available by tomorrow morning. The Department of Corrections, our prisons, have produced more than 34,000 sandbags for communities across South Louisiana. They've also completed the evacuation of 2,500 inmates from 7 local jails, those being Acadia, Orleans, Plaquemines, St. Mary, St. Bernard, Vermilion, and Terrebonne parishes. The CPRA continues to monitor gates across the coastal zone. As of a little earlier today, a total of 459 gates out of 692 are closed. That's up 246 since the briefing yesterday. All of our hurricane protection systems have been have been completely closed, and all structures are fully operational at this time. As late as this morning, additional protection measures were being undertaken by levee districts such as the South Lapouche Levee District. They actually completed sheet pile and sandbagging operations to address low areas ahead of the storm. Based on the hurricane track and the wind, rain, and surge forecast for the remainder of the hurricane, the CPRA is anticipating some overtopping of the southeast portions of the LaRose to Golden Meadow levee system, non-federal back levees around Middle Grove and Alliance in Plaquemines Parish, and non-federal levees in Lower St. Bernard Parish as well. And obviously overtopping is concerning, but I want to make sure that everybody understands overtopping and levee failure are not the same thing. And a levee failure can be much more catastrophic, and so they are not the same thing. Obviously, we're going to continue to monitor this flood protection system I can tell you right now, we do not anticipate any overtopping of the Mississippi River levees or overtopping of the levees in the hurricane risk reduction system around the greater New Orleans area. Clearly, you've seen the reports, and up until a short while ago, I was able to look at live video feeds. There are very significant storm surge impacts around Port Fourchon and Grand Isle, as well as in Plaquemines Parish near Point Lahache and Braithwaite. CPRA has pre-staged pumps throughout southeast Louisiana and will deploy flood fighting assets to coastal parishes in need of dewatering as soon as it is safe to do so. This is obviously a very fluid situation. It is rapidly changing, and that's why everyone needs to stay abreast by listening to news and following the guidance from your local officials. Really, nobody in southeast Louisiana should be out on the roads. But if travel becomes absolutely necessary after the storm, please proceed with extreme caution. There will be hazards out there that you may experience before any law enforcement or DOTD personnel or anybody else may be able to get to first and warn you about it. This is especially true of debris, downed power lines, and standing water. Please check 511la.org for road closures, and please don't drive through standing water. That's how we lose an awful lot of people after storms. Many parishes are announcing curfews as we speak, so all Louisianans should follow the directives of their local leaders, which are obviously designed to keep us all safe. And the conditions vary by parish, and they have different considerations in mind. And so please honor these curfews and avoid needless risk to your own safety and that of your family. And please, again, keep streets clear for emergency responders. If you have evacuated, don't be tempted tomorrow to return before you know that it is okay for you to do so. Please contact your Office of Emergency Preparedness or monitor any announcements that they have as to whether it is the right time for you to return. The last count that I had shortly before coming over here is we have 1,542 individuals being sheltered across the state. That is in at least 23 different shelters. The vast majority of those are being operated by parishes. Obviously, we expect this number to increase throughout the day and potentially in the days to come as people discover that their homes are no longer habitable. For the latest shelter information, text LA Shelter to 898-211, or you can call 211. Heed the guidance of local officials. Local officials will have the most up-to-date shelter information for a specific area or parish. As we have mentioned several times before, if you lose electricity and you decide to use a generator, it is imperative that you follow the instructions from the manufacturer. Please make sure that generator is well away from your home in a well-ventilated area. It should not be inside, shouldn't be in a garage or a crawl space, under a window or a vent. And on occasion, you'll need to refuel the generator. Please make sure that you allow it to cool off for at least 20 minutes before doing so. In closing, and before I take some questions, there is no doubt that the coming days and weeks are going to be extremely difficult for our state. And many, many people are going to be tested in ways that we can only imagine today. But I can also tell you that as a state, we've never been more prepared. Again, all the models that we've seen from the Army Corps of Engineers and from our own CPRA show that the Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System will hold and perform as intended. Will it be tested? Yes. But it was built for this moment. I have a tremendous amount of confidence in the team that we've assembled at the state level, all the local officials and first responders and our federal partners. And by the way, I want to thank FEMA Regional Administrator Tony Robinson from coming out of Texas to embed with us here. And I can tell you that a short while ago I had a call with Administrator Criswell of FEMA in Washington, and she is very closely watching what's happening here, coordinating with us, and already has various things en route so that we can employ them just as soon as possible, things like generators and so forth. And so I have a tremendous amount of confidence in our team, all the state and local officials, and our federal partners. But I want you to know I also have confidence in the people of Louisiana. They always continue to inspire me with their goodness and their decency and their generosity. And I know that they're going to do everything they can to protect themselves and their families and their neighbors, especially those who may have special needs. Maybe they're elderly, so forth. Please make sure that you check on them and stay safe. And I know it may not seem this way right now for many people out there across our state, but there is always light after darkness, and I can assure you we're going to get through this. And I do invite everyone to offer up a prayer for our state, for the people of our state, that we get through this just as soon as possible and in the best possible shape with the least loss of life. You know, property is replaceable. Lives are not. So that is obviously our first order of priority. So I'm going to stop there and take a few questions, and please feel free to direct your questions to any of the people that we have assembled here. And depending on what you ask me, I may ask them to come up and answer the question anyway. Yes? Yeah. It's weather dependent, and quite frankly, before the weather gets good enough for us to respond, it's going to also be dark. So what I can tell you is our expectation is that we will be ready at first light tomorrow morning to go out to those areas that we know already have received the most damaging impacts from the storm, principally wind and storm surge. You mentioned Grand Isle. I can tell you that the video that I've seen and the reports that I've received are just tremendous amounts of storm surge there and wind damage. The good news is, you know, I hesitate to give you a figure, but something like 98% of Grand Isle evacuated. And the people who are there, I believe, stay back in structures that are specifically designed and built to withstand these types of forces. But I have no doubt we're going to see extreme devastation, Grand Isle and elsewhere, but we will likely be sometime after first light tomorrow morning before we can get up in the air and get vehicles down there. And of course, you know, you got to travel LA1. I don't know if you saw the video, but LA1 was not in good shape in the Leeville area earlier. So we will be working that just as quickly as we possibly can, and in all likelihood traveling to Grand Isle and elsewhere in that vicinity via helicopter. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I can tell you no Tier 1 hospitals have been evacuated. Now, Tier 1 hospital is what we commonly think of as a hospital. By definition, we have some rehab hospitals, we have some behavioral health hospitals, and these are typically much smaller, and the patient's needs are not quite as acute. And we have evacuated 4 such hospitals. And since I'm on it, I'll tell you we've evacuated 22 nursing homes, 18 assisted living facilities, and 61 intermediate care facilities as well. No hospitals have been evacuated, the Tier 1 hospitals, because quite simply put, there's nowhere to bring those individuals. They're in a hospital because they need that setting, and we don't have the capacity elsewhere. I mentioned yesterday that over the previous 11 days or so, we've been able to achieve a 20% reduction in our COVID inpatient census across the state of Louisiana. The good news is almost all of that happened in southeast Louisiana. But there's still 2,450 COVID patients in our hospitals across the state, in addition to all the other patients that remain in our hospitals. And that is a much higher number than we ever experienced in the first 3 surges. And so it's still a very daunting situation. And quite frankly, we're concerned, as we have been for a long time, about staffing. But you know, these storms have an impact on staffing too, in terms of do they have to evacuate with their family for some reason? Does their home remain habitable so that they can live at home and go to work? And so we've got an awful lot of work to do, but we will have no higher priority than to make sure that our hospitals can remain in operation and functional. And that's going to be a challenge because we expect widespread power outage for some time. But we know that they have generators. We know that they have stocked up on fuel and water and food and on pharmaceuticals, things like oxygen and so forth. But quite frankly, we know that the longer the power stays out, the more challenging this is going to be. And the more devastation in an area, the harder it's going to be for them to have the staffing that they need. And, you know, one of the challenges that we're having is we actually had additional staff coming in from out of state yesterday pursuant to contracts that we have executed. And the staff wasn't able to get in and because they didn't have any place to stay. There wasn't a hotel room open anywhere. And so that was a real challenge. And so I guess I say those things just to point out that their challenges are going to manifest themselves in ways that we can't even imagine now. But we have a great team here and across the state locally, and we're going to do everything that we can to prepare for every contingency that we can come up with right now. But this is going to be a very, very challenging situation. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, about the what that went down? Oh, yeah. We have not received any word that any of the hospitals are having any challenges at the moment. And I can tell you, I had a conversation with many of the CEOs of the largest hospitals. They really felt like that they were more prepared than they probably have ever been for a hurricane. But that doesn't mean that they won't have significant challenges. But as I stand here before you, I have not heard that there's any situation with respect to those hospitals because of any pumps or power issues.
All right, we're going to head over now to Chris Franklin, who has an update on the weather here as we are seeing this storm head closer to New Orleans.
Yes, and as expected, we've been talking about for the last several days that due to the fact that we're going to find ourselves on the eastern side and more so the northeastern quadrant of the storm, the worst side, that we are going to see numerous tornado warnings issued. Now, not all of them will be able to be verified by the National Weather Service because we're going to see the strong winds and heavy rainfall kind of diluting the damage in a sense, and that's how these are actually determined because radar is indicating what may be a tornado kind of racing across Harrison into Hancock County, and then that might continue north of Picayune into Pearl River County, so along I-59. And again, these storms are racing. I'm actually read the text from the National Weather Service just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. This is about 7 miles or so northeast of Kill, and then about 7 miles north of Diamond Head, and moving northwest at 50 miles an hour. The radar is indicating rotation, so again, this is not an observed tornado. And I've also said we're probably going to see dozens of these throughout the course of the afternoon, evening, and into the overnight. But what we see here is rotation being depicted on radar of a tornado that could be moving. This is north of Bay St. Louis, north of Kill, and that is moving up toward the area, generally north of Picayune, and it is moving. So if you're in its path, you need to take shelter now, but it is moving at 50 miles per hour. We can also switch over to our velocity.
I don't get it. What's the mission? He a bishop. He won't never tell the truth. Nah, we ain't get the decision. He won't never tell the truth. Nah, we ain't get the decision. Literal.
Louisiana, if they cannot stay home, whether a relative or a friend or whatever, they're not going to live. And really, you know, you figure out which areas, either because of standing water or a lot of destruction because of the wind and so forth, need to be, or a lot of destruction because of the wind and so forth, need to be evacuated. And really, you get a great feel for that when you start the search and rescue operations. And you move those people to what we call a lily pad. And you can do that from the high water vehicles or from the boats and so forth. From there, you move them by bus, and you're going to move them. We can't identify those places today. I mean, we've got them set up and organized, but where you go to will depend on where you move.
That we're talking.
And we're going to have these buses available in order to do that. Now, with respect to COVID.
603 is going to continue in the direction of Picayune, but staying north of Picayune, it appears, and it is moving at about 50 miles per hour. As I've said, we are going to see dozens of these over the course. You know, you look at radar, it doesn't look like much. When you get a better analysis of the winds, there is definitely a little bit of rotation there, and that's what the Weather Service is depicting. So what appears to be an almost innocent little shower that is moving through, but a heavy downpour nonetheless. What is moving through, it doesn't have any kind of the signatures that we would look for in terms of severe weather. This is kind of a different setup. These are usually fairly weak, short-lived tornadoes, but tornadoes nonetheless. But it usually is on more of the lower end of the EF scale, usually an EF 0 or 1. And I will say the maximum sustained winds that we're seeing down along the coast are going to be far greater than what any kind of smaller tornado may develop if it does move in and out of certain spots within the broad rotation of the storm itself. So we'll talk more about that, or just to again highlight these areas where these tornado warnings are going to be issued. And just a quick radar update, the storm is getting closer and closer. It looks like Galliano now in on the northeastern eye wall. This is the inner eye wall. This is that outer eye wall. It does look like, at least in the last few passes of radar, I'm going to widen out here and we're going to zoom, or I'm going to kind of animate this, going back in time. It does look like we might be starting to see that. Is that another warning or just a continuation of the warning? Oh, just that they're continuing the warning, okay. Let's see. Okay, so what we're looking at with regard to with Ida as it continues to move inland, it did slow down. The 2 o'clock advisory did have the forward motion northwest at about 12 miles an hour, so it has slowed down a little bit, but you're
willing, we'll get through this sooner than later. But don't kid yourself. This is going to take a lot of resources, a little bit of luck, and as my grandfather would say, the grace of God and the goodwill of the neighbors. And by the way, look out for your neighbors. If you're in the region, look out for your neighbors. So thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioner. I really think it all works. I'm not supposed to take any questions, but go ahead. I'm not going to answer Afghanistan now. Okay. Really and truly, thank you. I know there's no group of Americans know how dangerous it is more than you guys do. So let's stay at it to the very end. I know you will. You've done everything you can to help prepare these folks, but I tell you what, it's I think they're going to be taking a look at additional levee systems a little further south before this is over. So thank you. And I promise you, the governor is truly appreciative. Probably never going to meet him, but he's a good guy. He's really appreciative. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
sustained winds within the entire eye wall. It's usually one point that the hurricane hunters can find that maximum sustained wind. It does not mean it's a uniform wind speed. Far from it. It usually may just be one specific area. So as I was kind of highlighting the storm and kind of analyzing with the velocities of the wind speeds at the center of the storm, I was really struggling to find any location that had 150 mile per hour. Most of them were in the 130 range, which is still a devastating wind speed, no question about it. But it does look like, at least based on some of the observations that we're making, radar data kind of keeps going in and out here. Don't know if it's related to the storm. Our radar site is up in Slidell, but it does look like we can probably expect maybe 70 mile per hour sustained winds gusting up to 90 within the outer eye wall. And speaking of Cocodrie, as I'd said, we'd estimated wind speeds of 130 miles an hour, and I was praising the folks out at Lumcon for their cameras. About 1 o'clock, I was looking at some of the images from their camera network, and then right before 2 o'clock, they all went dead. So we've lost the camera footage that was coming out, or the live camera stream out of Cocodrie that we're using just to see that inundation of water. I'm kind of working on a graphic here. I was looking at some of the surge numbers as we can look at some of the real-time data along the coastline, and we're kind of working on a graphic right now. And looking at the surge numbers, you know, it's going to get higher, but right now at Port Fourchon, the water level looks like it got up to about 3 feet. So that was the surge that they saw in Port Fourchon, 3 feet. Grand Isle, it peaked at about 4 and approaching 5 foot is what we had observed in, let's see, that new alert from the National Weather Service as I'm talking. Okay, they've canceled the tornado warning. Again, sometimes these are going to be usually fairly quick. They tend not to last for very long, and thankfully it looked like whatever rotation was there was no longer apparent on radar. So that's some good news for the folks in Mississippi. But that's only the first of, well, actually, I think the second. I think we had one earlier this morning, of many that we are going to see throughout the afternoon and evening. And they're going to move very quickly. And as I said, we sometimes don't get a whole lot of warning because these will spin up very, very rapidly. But as I was mentioning, I'm kind of looking at some of the data here of some of these inundation or these stations that are reporting inundation numbers, and the observed height at Grand Isle has so far only been 4.87 feet. And we were talking about, when we were looking at those cameras in Cocodrie, we could see some of the buildings just across the street there from the facility, and at ground level there was certainly some high water, but it did not appear to be at a great height. So it looks like most of these locations, and again, as of now, this is still pumping in that water. This is still sending in the storm surge. So the surge numbers will likely increase. However, it's been just very interesting to look at some of these observations. It almost looks like Grand Isle, the numbers are starting to fall. The water level is starting to fall. Same at Port Fourchon. The numbers are beginning to drop. So just something to note. It looks like we did see the levels at, let's see, right around Southwest Pass get up to about 4 feet or so. And then around Shell Beach, it looked like the water levels have kind of peaked at about 6.8. So we've actually seen water levels in terms of a surge a bit higher to the east of the mouth of the river as opposed to those points west of the mouth of the river and along the southern coast. So we will kind of reanalyze that as we continue through the afternoon to see if these surge numbers can indeed be confirmed, which again, if they can be confirmed, that is good news. So if our producers want to tell me where we're going to go from here, I don't know if we want to go back to the governor as again that tornado warning. Okay, we're going to toss things back to the anchors. Again, the storm moving inland. If there is any good news, it looks like from actual observations from a friend of Eric's is that wind gusts, while very high and will cause some damage, have been at about 90 miles per hour within this outer eye wall. And if your friend wants to report back once they start to get into the inner eye wall, we'll get a little bit better estimate of what the winds are doing there. Hopefully we are starting to see the storm as it does start to interact more with land and the center comes in contact with more land. We should begin to see that wind field, the maximum sustained winds, begin to shrink a bit, and hopefully the storm will continue to weaken through the next several hours.
Your lips to God's ears, right?
I hope so.
And Chris, my friend at home just sent me some video. He must be in that in-between part between the outer and the inner, because it doesn't look bad down there at all right now.
So, yeah, okay, so where he is in Homa, and okay, this is the latest image from radar. So, yeah, he might find himself kind of either where the wind and the rain is starting to subside a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, the winds are going to go fairly light in between these two eye walls. And then once he gets into this is likely going to be a bit stronger. So I'm curious as to what his observations will be in the next few minutes or so. Because this won't be long. Again, it's moving about 12 miles an hour. So a little while longer, he'll be into the inner eye wall. Which looks like it has been weakening, thankfully.
Yeah.
That is good news.
Yeah, that is good news. All right, thank you, Chris. And one of the areas, of course, that is expected to see significant impacts from this, that is already seeing significant impacts. We saw Paul Murphy getting thrown around by the winds earlier today, and he's joining us live with the latest now from St. Bernard Parish. Paul, how are conditions where you are now?
Katie, we just got some news a short time ago that we've been talking with folks about the possibility that a ferry had gotten loose from its moorings on the Mississippi River. We just confirmed that from Parish President Guy McGinnis. We talked to him a short time ago.
We got a report from our Homeland Security Director, John Wren. He made a phone call to the Coast Guard. There's a ferry, I believe it's the Chalmette Ferry. There have been reports that it was the RTA pedestrian ferry that broke loose and is being pushed upstream by the wind, and there's nothing that can be done at this moment, but obviously we got a ferry in the river.
And the RTA pedestrian ferries park right across the river in Lower Coast Algiers, right across from the ferry landing. So right now we are trying to get some more information about that for you from the RTA, which we talked to the spokesperson for the RTA just a short time ago as well, and she's in the process of trying to gather some information about that. So in terms of where that boat is, we know that it is drifting upstream. We know that it's near mile marker 90. What we don't know is how close it is to the levees. I know that some folks on social media have been asking me, is this boat going to ram the levees? Well, we just don't know, and at this point it's some early reporting on this, so we don't want to get ahead of the story here. We're double checking, we're getting some more information from the RTA, and once we get that, we'll be back on the air with that. Now, as for the rest of St. Bernard Parish, if you look behind me, you can see that it is really coming down. The rain is really coming down. We got that sideways rain that you see that are accompanying these tropical hurricane type storms. We were expecting winds of more than 100 miles per hour. You can see across the street there's actually some small branches rolling down the street here. A lot of rain, a lot of wind, and as for the areas of St. Bernard Parish that are outside the levee protection, we're told that the storm surge is coming up. They were expecting the storm surge to be anywhere between 8 and 12 feet. So that would certainly put water back up on the road in places like Delacroix and places like Waclawski and Shell Beach. And that, we're told, is happening at this point. The water has made its way all the way up to the rock dam on the Florissant Highway, and we haven't heard about any water on LA 46 just yet. Inside the levee protection here in St. Bernard, things appear to be holding. Folks are staying home. The only vehicles that we've seen out on the road lately have been sheriff's deputies, so that's a good thing. So it's still watching and waiting to see how much is damage, how many impacts from Ida we're going to see here in St. Bernard. And once that storm moves, the parish government is poised to spring into action and get out there and start clearing up these roads. And we're told that there are some downed trees. There are 3,100 as last count of customers, energy customers without power down here, and that number will likely grow throughout the day. And that's the story here in St. Bernard Parish. Paul Murphy, Eyewitness News.
All right, thank you, Paul. We hope that you have somewhere very safe to go whenever this kicks up even more.
Yeah. And we are having issues in St. Charles Parish. Let's get over to there. People are in emergency shelters in St. Charles, and William Joy talked with some of them.
Right now, we are at a community center in St. Charles Parish, which has been set up as one of 2 shelters of last resort for people here in the parish to take shelter from this storm. We got here around 10 a.m. There was a steady flow of people coming in to take shelter. But since then, it seems like everybody who is going to make this the place where they wait out their storm has already gotten here. Went to a middle school earlier where there were maybe a couple families, but here there are about 30 people maybe who have decided to take shelter here. Right now, the winds have started to pick up a little bit. There's maybe a sprinkle of rain, but nothing compared to what we will be seeing later on. Some of these families said they just made the decision this morning because they got calls from other concerned family members. Others said past experiences are what led them to decide that they did not want to wait out this storm in their home or their trailers or wherever they were living at. I talked to Rudy Johnson earlier, who said he has experienced too many hurricanes before to decide to not seek shelter. Take a listen.
I feel fine. I feel fine. I'm still prayed up. I'm trusting, leaning, and depending on Jesus. Because he said, put your trust in him, and he's gonna direct my path. So that's all I can do, lean and depend on him.
At what point did you decide, hey, I need to come to this shelter, I need to seek help?
Well, we was in Colorado, and I know I was in a mobile home, and I don't have no good support in the mobile home. And they told us, RVs and trailers, you got to get out of there. So I was in another building, and the building is not too secure. We thought it was stable, so they told us we had to get out of there. So they said something about Texas. I said, oh no, I said, they're going to have too much contract flow on Texas. So they opened this shelter up, opened this building up for a shelter. So we decided to come here.
I saw people coming in with everything from ice chests, little kids with pillows, blankets, food. What all did you guys try to bring with you? Because I know you're here with several family members.
Oh, I got cooked food, I got sandwich food, I got snacks, got drinks. I'm prepared. I'm not only gonna last. I hope I don't have to stay here. I got enough stuff to last me but 2 or 3 days.
You were telling me earlier you've been through this. You've been through a lot of hurricanes already in the past. And how closely have you been watching this one compared to others?
I've been following this up since the beginning. And as this thing started getting stronger and stronger, and it started getting intensified, and Bessie was 130 miles an hour back in the day. I rode that out, rode Camille out, and I said if I get a chance, I'll never stay around no more, ride no more out. I was looking for safety.
Yeah, so you've been there, done that, so you decided the shelter is the way to go.
That's right, that's right, that's the way to go.
The winds picked up a little bit here in just the last little bit. You can see kind of some of the, bushes pushing somewhat. But how, what's, on the path here, obviously. How concerned are you about what's headed here?
Well, what's headed here, I don't want to be no part of it, because they tell you got 5 cents to get us on way, and I won't do that because see that wind is terrible, and I know water is powerful too. I don't want to have no connection with either one of them unless I'm drinking it or taking a bath in it.
I know you said you're here with a lot of family. Did you guys talk early this morning and make the call, hey, we're all coming? I mean, how did that kind of play out for the family?
Well, they were all us stayed together. Family stays together, prayers together, stays together. Got my family right here. I got my daughter and my sister-in-law right there, all us together.
You talked about prayers. You said you're in a mobile home. You know what this kind of wind can do to homes like that, to trailers. What are you thinking right now about what you may end up coming back to after you're done here?
Well, I'm just hoping for the best. Might be the worst, but I'm hoping for the best. Hoping nothing don't happen. You will have to start all over again.
Now, to give you some perspective, that warehouse that you're looking at over there is really where we're expecting this storm to come through and deliver heavy winds and heavy rain as well. The storm surge is another real concern here because we don't have the same level of levee protection that New Orleans does. So as Rudy talked about, that water is really why a lot of people are evacuating as well. Another thing you need to know about this shelter, there are no supplies here. I mean, we're seeing people come in with crates of ice. People coming in, as Rudy talked about, with food, with snacks, kids with pillows under their arms. A lot of families that have shown up as well. Like I said, about 30 people that I've seen come in so far. This could be a place where they end up waiting out the storm, certainly through its strongest winds, through the strongest rain, but they don't know what they're going to be going back to by the time this is all said and done. In St. Charles Parish, for Eyewitness News, I'm William Joy.
All right, William, thank you.
Yeah, certainly a situation to watch there. Something else that's on a lot of people's minds here in the metro area is this situation with the Sewage and Water Board, particularly their request to conserve water because of the sewage pumps, and then also whether or not they're going to have enough power to power the drainage pumps. David Hammer with our Down the Drain investigative team is, of course, on that part of the story for us, and he's joining us live with the latest on all of that. David?
Yeah, Katie, I wanted to update you on a couple of things. The first thing is that there are 9 sewer lift stations that are without power as of about an hour ago, and the Sewerage and Water Board says that that number is probably going to rise or has already risen. That is 9 out of 84 sewer lift stations. Again, this is the dedicated stations to lifting the sewage up and out to Florida Avenue, where the main outfall station is for receiving that and for treating the sewage. So we are not sure exactly how the issue with substation, with an Entergy substation, directly affects all of those because they get independent power feeding to those sewer lift stations. But there's one that's right nearby here. Station A is actually just behind me and a couple of blocks down on the other side of Armstrong Park. And so we don't know exactly which lift stations are affected, and that's why the mayor was urging people to conserve water at a press conference this morning. Let's take a listen to what she said when I asked her about the sewer lift stations.
On the front end, as Ramsey was giving his update on the infrastructure, talking both Sewerage and Water Board as well as Entergy, we were notified of a power outage relative to the Entergy New Orleans side of the operation, just as confirmed by Councilmember Moreno. Those matters we know have compromised as it relates to the sewer system. That's where the request for water conservation came into play. That still remains active at this particular time. Ramsey, anything you need to add, you can do so now.
Yeah, real quick. So yeah, David, we just got that, which is why those ENO generators are being deployed. Hopefully we'll get through it, but I think for our residents, an overwhelming approach to this storm. If you don't need to use water, don't use it for the moment, okay? For the moment, if you don't need to use water, just be conservative with it.
So that was the city's infrastructure czar, Ramsey Green, specifically talking about the attempt to get Entergy's generators out to those lift stations. Again, we don't have the exact locations of those 9 lift stations that are without power, but the process is ongoing to try to get those back up so that people can use their water, flush their toilets and all that, and not have to worry about that backing up. But they are telling people to conserve water as much as they can for the time being. I also wanted to update you on something that people have been hearing about that we've mentioned in the past, and that is that there's a possibility that there is an offshore oil platform that may have become unmoored in the Gulf of Mexico. This would have been the Shell Mars platform. It's about 150 miles south of New Orleans in the deep, deep water. I want to be clear that no federal agency and Shell have not confirmed that that is the case. They are all looking into it, but cannot get an assessment until they can get out there after the storm has cleared. But I want to make sure that it is clear that this is a floating, tension-connected platform, not one that is a steady structure all the way down. So if it was knocked off its mooring, it would be floating in the Gulf. And it's important to note, Shell says that they had already evacuated that platform prior to the storm of all personnel, and they had shut in all wells that were connected to that platform. So if it is loose, as has been reported by some outlets, and they confirm that after they get out there to assess it, it would not likely to have caused any damage to the bottom of the seafloor where the wells come up and where they're closed in, as we've seen with the Taylor Energy platform that did collapse in 2004. So again, we continue to pursue that to make sure that we get that confirmed if that is the case. But at this point, we do not have that confirmed, and that platform was already evacuated of personnel, and all the wells were shut in prior to the storm's arrival. Back to you.
All right, David, thank you very much, and thank you for clearing all that up. We're looking at some video in the French Quarter right now.
Yeah, wind's whipping. We're hearing it at the station here. We've already lost power. We definitely took some power hits here at our Rampart Street studios. And it appears that that is happening in many parts of the city of New Orleans. We heard the same story uptown a couple of hours ago. So it is a slow progression, even though the winds are not even as high as they're expected to get here in the city. But power is already becoming an issue.
I'm taking a look at those maps right now, the outage maps that we've been seeing through Entergy, and they're just continuing to climb more and more and more throughout the day. Right now in Jefferson Parish, there's about 118,000 people, I should say customers without power, and in Orleans Parish, we've got 94,000 people. And then over in St. Tammany Parish with Clico, there are just under 10,000 people without power over there. So this is definitely intensifying in that way.
Yeah, and this is a look in Houma where they are expecting to get some of the worst of Hurricane Ida just in the next little bit. Chris Franklin has been keeping us posted on when they expect to get it there. Any idea on the timing on that, Chris? In Houma.
In Houma. This looks pretty bad right here.
Yeah, they're closing in on it. If we want to
closing in on it. Okay, so they're closing in on the worst of it.
Yes. Well, they've already gotten the outer eye wall, which looks like we can kind of estimate wind speeds were about 90 mile per hour gusts. And let's see where.
You got to assume this is probably from the outer one because it's been sent into us. So are they in the inner one yet? The inner wall yet?
They're getting very close. I'm pulling up our radar now, and we can maybe even jump over to that just for a second, just to show you Houma, and there's the outer eye wall. This is.
The hurricane hunters going. We're gonna show video of them going in the eye of the storm.
Good Lord!
Look at this.
And that's just it's an amazing sight.
It's incredible that they're able to do it. It just blows my mind every time we have one of these storms and we see that they're just crisscrossing in and out of the eye wall like it's nothing.
I've spoken to many of them over the years. In fact, guy, Chris Dyke, is a major in the Air Force now. I went to college with him, and he's one of the hurricane hunters. And they'll all tell you, I would rather fly through a Category 5 storm than ever ride it out on the ground. These guys think people that ride them out on the ground are nuts. And they fly into hurricanes.
And they've said, nuts.
What?
And we think they're nuts.
And we think that, they will all tell you the exact same thing. They will all say, I would rather fly into it than ever ride it out on the ground.
Yeah, but when you see that eye, and you were talking about that earlier, Chris, that when you get into that eye, it's just dead calm.
It is dead calm. It's an eerie feeling. And really, if you folks remember back to last year, the first time a lot of New Orleanians actually got to experience it was Zeta. It passed directly over the city. And folks went outside to start cleaning up.
I do remember that.
That was in the eye, and you had the opposite side of the eye wall that would pass right back over, and the winds would pick up again, and usually very quickly. It goes from dead calm to those winds ramping up very, very rapidly. And it looks like in Houma, they're, if not totally underneath that outer eye wall, then most of the city is, and that inner eye wall is closing in pretty quickly at the moment. So there may be a little bit of a lull here for a few minutes in Houma before, again, this is what I'm talking about right here, before that, here's the outer eye wall that's passing through at the moment, and then here comes the inner eye wall where winds are going to be stronger as the eye itself, the center of the storm, looks as though it's going to either pass directly over Houma. It may center itself more over the Raceland area, but certainly getting in on the worst winds.
And Chris, I have a friend in Thibodeau. Sorry to cut you off, Eric. I have a friend in Thibodeau who's just up on your graph there on that radar, just a little bit, and he said that they were just starting to get pummeled.
And pummeled in with respect to the center of the storm, those would be the weaker winds and rain. That's
so
not, it's going to go downhill very quickly.
Well, yeah, there's more pummeling to come.
Yes, there's a lot more from, kind of round 1 and 2 here.
Speaking of pummeling, we can hear the roof here. It sounds like it's ready to fly off.
It does, and the winds are picking up. Let's see, we can go into our metro winds graphic and actually look at what the wind speeds are doing here in the city. And they're gusting up to 40 to 50, almost 60 miles an hour across parts of the city from downtown into mid-city. They're picking up across Metairie, parts of Jefferson Parish. They're gusting up to 82 mile per hour wind gusts at the Lakefront Airport.
Thus, the reason they closed the airport. Now, let me ask you this, Chris. We're still a couple of hours away or so from the worst here in the city?
Yes, so what we have been listening to outside of our building in the city is not the worst, because the worst, why not our radar here?
So I'm going to try to not say the roof's about to fly off if it's about to get a lot worse.
So we might need to all hang on to it or something. But we're looking at, again, based on the trajectory of the storm, you know, kind of moving in this direction toward the northwest, it does look like we're going to stay clear across most of the metro area from this outer eye wall. Just based on the trend, it does look like we're going to stay clear of this outer eye wall where the winds have been gusting up to 90 miles an hour. But as I just pointed out, along the lakefront, you have an exposed area. The winds may gust there anyway. In the city, we're looking at some of these bands of heavy rain, which are now moving through, and we have been finding winds of probably about 50 to 60 miles per hour. Yet to be seen if we're really going to see sustained hurricane force of over 75 miles per hour in the city, as it does look like even those hurricane force winds are just about wrapped around the outer eye wall. So that area of the strongest winds looks to be in more this region that kind of cut a swath that will move up toward the northwest. We may avoid the metro area from getting the worst of the winds. Unfortunately, for points northwest of there, Thibodaux, and then as you continue into the river parishes, you're not going to avoid it.
Yeah, but right now, and we've seen with the wind we're getting right now, we've seen a fair amount of damage around the city. Justin Kennedy from Parkway Bakery and Tavern sent me a picture. His sign got blown off.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean,
already.
Yeah, people are still getting stuff. We saw that shot in the French Quarter when Tom was in the
Mobile Forecast Center.
Mobile Forecast Center, sorry.
That's the technical term.
And then that awning was down. I mean, you know, we are already seeing some damage around the city.
Yeah.
Very much so.
I can't even imagine what it's like down in Galliano and those places. I mean, Galliano, it might be calm right now if your radar's any indicator.
Well, it looks like just to the west of Galliano is where the eye of the storm is. So Galliano itself looks like they're in on the eastern inner eye wall right now. So they are getting some of the strongest winds.
It must just be scary.
That is terrifying. If it's scary here in the city and the winds have not been nearly what they're experiencing down along the coastline, that must be terrifying. And then your friend in Thibodaux saying it was getting rough. That's not the word to describe it. It's going to get a whole lot worse coming up here.
And when is this thing going to start to weaken, Chris?
That's been
the big question.
That has been the million-dollar question.
It's time.
You know, kind of looking at some of our graphics to get a little bit better idea of the structure of the storm and when we should start to see. I was going to show a wind model, but even our forecast models have been almost overestimating it. Thankfully, they have been almost overestimating the intensity of the wind and the size of that maximum radius of those strong winds. So just to get an idea with the rainfall, and you can kind of judge that as you get the more intense rain bands moving through, you're also going to find some of the strongest winds. Notice, even as of 7 o'clock, now look, from 6:45 up to 7, the National Hurricane Center, yeah, it's still a 4, then dropping to a 2. And we are going to find ourselves in New Orleans again through the 4 o'clock up till 7, 8, within some of the strongest winds. So this isn't going to be a quick inundation of some of the strong winds. 8:30, 9 o'clock, finally moving. You see the center up toward Baton Rouge. So it really won't be until 10 that we kind of see that main wind field of the hurricane force winds finally starting to pull away from the city of New Orleans. And then you're looking at some of the strong winds having moved onto the North Shore and kind of continuing there into the overnight hours.
Question about this that you have paused right here, because I'm looking at Slidell, and I know that they have an issue with storm surge usually after one of these things passes, and if you look at where the storm is there, that seems problematic for them.
That would be, because at this point you still have that southerly flow and that surge of water that is still getting piled up. Now usually it's going to be the leading edge where you're going to get it worse, but it is still coming in at that point. And even for the folks along the southern coast, it is still, with that strong southerly wind, you still have that water that will be surging up. And this is going into the overnight hours now of Monday morning.
And Chris, we're watching the radar. And when do you think we'll start seeing not just the heavy winds, but the heavy rain, the possible 2, 3, 4 inches an hour?
That likely in the city will start to come. We can kind of time this out a little bit. Rather soon. I've been kind of talking about maybe the next hour or so we should start to see some of the heaviest rainfall, and then kind of slowly animating this. You're still looking at kind of the core of the heavy rainfall going into later on tonight. Some of the rainfall totals around the area so far have been manageable. So far the rain has been at least as far as in the city and all of our observing stations, not terrible. We've seen almost an inch of rain at Kenner, a little more than an inch downtown, almost an inch and a half, a little more than that from Lakefront up to Slidell. So far we have been okay, but more rain is to come. And it's going to be during that 4 to maybe 8, 9 o'clock time frame that we should see really some of the heaviest of our rain, and for the city, some of the strongest winds.
One of the things that I'm noting on this graph that you're showing right now, Slidell with 1.64 inches of rain so far, that seems interesting that they have the heaviest amounts.
Yeah, you know, they probably, and this is always what makes rain forecasting difficult with tropical storms, hurricanes, is that it really depends on precisely where these heavy bands set up. And looking back at just the last hour, it looks like some of the heaviest of the rain was kind of pounding parts of St. Tammany Parish. You get the heavy rainfall that is now starting to move into northern Jefferson and over the city. And with more to come, those totals as they stand now, we will start to see those adding up very, very quickly through the rest of the night.
We do have a crew in Slidell. Marcelino Benito with one of our sister stations is here helping us cover this monster of a storm. Apparently he's going to join us live right now with the latest on what we're seeing in Slidell.
Well, guys, I'm joined by Police Chief Randy Fandle. Chief, give me an update on the situation here in the city of Slidell.
Right now, it's doing just what we expected. We talked to the Weather Service. We've been in constant contact with them. From now till probably midnight tonight, the conditions are going to start deteriorating pretty quick. So most of the calm weather that we've seen earlier part of the day, it's over with. So we're asking people if, as of now, you should be sheltered in place. You know, stay off the roads from now on.
Are you guys getting any sort of 911 calls at this point? Tell me what you're hearing at dispatch.
Right now, it's minimal. We haven't had any major damages or anything like that reported as of yet. We're expecting some wind damages still. We've got power outages in different areas of the city right now. This electricity here went out a little while ago, but it came back on after about 20 minutes. 25 minutes.
The calls that you are getting, you were telling me people are calling with questions. There's a lot of anxiety in the city about what may or may not happen as the night goes on, right?
Yeah, right now we're getting a lot of calls coming in. People are anxious, wanting to know what's going on. We had a lot of citizens in Slidell decided not to ride this one out, and they evacuated. So what we want to tell them right now is we have plenty of officers on the street. Until the winds get to around 40 miles an hour, we'll tell the officers to start sheltering. So please stay off the roads. Once we tell those officers to shelter, they will not be able to get back out until tomorrow morning. And another thing we're asking, tomorrow morning, let the first responders, the fire department, sheriff's office, let us get out in those neighborhoods first and assess the damages before everybody else wants to come back in. Let us see what things are first.
Obviously, this is the anniversary of Katrina. That's top of mind for a lot of folks in this area. We're riding out the storm with you guys here. We were talking earlier, this actually flooded, during Katrina 16 years ago. Talk to me about what it was like then and how you guys don't expect the same sort of situation this time.
We definitely don't expect the same storm surge as we did in Katrina. In Katrina, where we're standing right now, they probably had 8 foot of water. So we're obviously not expecting that. Our lower areas on the south side of town that are used to having flooding issues, they know they're going to get it, but a lot of those houses are raised right now. So we're prepared. We prepared for the worst on this one.
Power outages already an issue?
They're scattered around. My last report, there was about 6,000 customers in the Slidell area that were out.
All right, one more question for you, Chief. What is the best thing folks can do? What would you ask folks to do who stuck around, as the next few hours go by during the storm rolling in?
Like I said a while ago, shelter in place. We don't want anybody out on the roads at this point. A lot of people were on the roads this morning doing last-minute preparations. I think they woke up this morning and realized that it was going to be a little worse than they expected, so they were out getting supplies. But as of now, they should be sheltered in place, and please stay there until we give the all-clear tomorrow morning.
All right, Chief, we appreciate your time. We checked in with you guys maybe about an hour and a half ago, maybe 2 hours, and then it wasn't raining. You can see how quickly things changed. Conditions have definitely worsened out here. The wind's getting a lot gustier, the rain coming down a lot harder. And again, as I've heard your meteorologist say just a few minutes ago, we're just getting started here in Slidell. Back to you guys.
Could get a lot worse as we move throughout the day and the night, especially since you guys have already seen so much water. Thank you so much for that report, Marcelino Benito, with one of our sister stations in Slidell. All right, Charisse.
I'm sorry, I'm
We have a
still
new
getting
face.
mic'd up.
Hello.
Hi. I magically morphed from Eric Paulson.
She did. It's such a much more beautiful view over there now. Let me tell you.
Oh my goodness.
She's like a breath of fresh air.
You know, we've been missing you. No,
Thank you.
Nothing against Eric Paulson.
I've had a lot of rest. You know, rain helps out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are certainly in it for the long haul with Hurricane Ida. We're just starting to get really a sense of how strong and potentially devastating this storm could be. So, you know, we're here for it, and we're going to be here for it.
Well, and Mike McDaniel has been kind of down in the heart of where all this is happening. He is in Terrebonne Parish. He has been there. He's been
Hey there, yeah, we are somewhere safe. We are actually inside the Emergency Operations Center here in Gray, which is in the northeastern part of Terrebonne Parish. We went down to the southern part a little earlier today. We're back up here seeking shelter as the storm kind of really gets in here, and the eye wall really almost sets on top of Houma and where we are here at the EOC. You can see folks behind me out here working, monitoring everything. With us now is Mark Black with the Parish. Appreciate you being with us. Can you kind of give us a run through of what you guys are seeing now from an operational standpoint?
Right now, we are just simply monitoring the situation because there's not a lot we can do about it right now. Tomorrow, perhaps, we'll be able to get crews out to begin to assess the damage, but it has to be done very safely. We cannot put bucket crews out, for example, if the wind is more than 35 miles an hour. It's just not safe. The police department, law enforcement officials have basically suspended service right now. They've kind of went to safe areas. Most of our fire departments have suspended service. Acadian Ambulance has suspended service. It's just not safe to be out there right now. So as soon as the wind allows, they'll get back out there and start doing assessments. I know, I'm looking at the map there, it looks like a lot of damage on that's the Entergy grid. I know Sleeka has put out a news release about what it's going to do as soon as it can get out there to assess the damages. And the city of Houma operates an electric utility. Not sure yet the extent of the damage that system has sustained. That is one of the functions here. One of our parish employees is the emergency support function for utilities, so he'll be able to tell us a little bit more later on today when we have another update.
What type of reports are you getting on any type of actual structural or infrastructure damage across the area?
Just saw some pictures from someone who was driving down Barrow Street in Houma. A roof came off of one of the retail establishments. You know, some areas minor damage. I noticed some damage to the roof and air conditioner on top of one of the buildings next to Government Tower. So, you know, it kind of leads me to believe that there may be some extensive damage to buildings in Houma.
And right now, as we look outside the doors, it's a lot of wind. It seems that that's the really big issue right here. Is that what we expect to contend with throughout the evening? Or
I think so. We don't expect any water. I've got no reports about the levee situation as far as storm surge. It's just the wind, and obviously we're going to have to wait it out, and when it begins to subside, you know, when it's safe enough, we'll be able to tell what kind of damages we've sustained parish-wide.
You know, earlier in this forecast, we thought maybe a little bit more on top of us than it actually is right now. I mean, we're still going to get a lot of damage out in this way. So from an operational standpoint, logistics, how does that change things, or how does it change your mood in regards to as we go through this storm?
Well, I think what it does, it sort of relieves the pressure that our levees may have been under from a large, that was a 15-foot projected storm surge, which could have given us some problems, but with that shift to the east, I don't think that surge will be quite at that level. So far, we don't have any reports about any levee overtoppings. We don't have any reports yet, but as those come in, of course, we'll report those.
I appreciate you being with us. And as that Entergy grid he was talking about that he mentioned, we have it off to the side right here, just about everything south of Highway 90. That goes through Lafourche as well as Terrebonne parishes. without power, and almost everything south of 308 is without power. You can see all the red maps there. So there will be a lot of work, as Mark was just talking about, for energy crews to get back out there and start restoring this power once the storm passes. But of course, it can only be done in a safe manner. We, of course, inside the EOC will keep watching this, as well as these other responders back here behind me, doing everything they can to make sure everyone across this parish is safe and everything is going well as can be. Live at EOC in Terrebonne Parish, Mike McDaniel, Eyewitness News.
Mike, thank you so much. We do have another tornado warning in effect. Now, so far, most of our warnings have been centered into Mississippi with these outer bands that have been moving through. This one just south of Diamond Head, but it does look like it could be moving toward the Stennis Space Center. So this is one that the Weather Service is saying you need to take shelter immediately. Now, a lot of folks along the Mississippi coast did stay. Hopefully, those folks are north of I-10. But again, within these cells, within these bands of rain, it does not take much to get some brief spin up and rotation within the storm that can produce excuse me, a tornado. Now again, these tornadoes are usually not confirmed. They're well within the heavy rain, the heavy tropical rainfall, but what happens is we can detect it on radar with the velocities. That actually looks at the winds, and when you see, here we go, when you see these little couplets of the bright colors kind of close together, the blues, greens, sometimes it'll be more of it into the reds, but when you do see those little couplets, that indicates, and what we've also seen is the reason for them being in mainly coastal Mississippi is that they almost may be starting out as water spouts in the Mississippi Sound, and then as they move inland, they hold together, or at least that rotation does. Now, these are moving at about 50 miles an hour, so if you are within this warned area, you need to take shelter immediately. This will be crossing I-10 very rapidly. These storms themselves within the bands are moving faster than the entirety of Ida is. So these are moving at about 50 miles an hour up toward the northwest. So this is for Hancock. I'm going to zoom in a little bit tighter just to give you an idea of where we're talking. You have Shoreline Park and Bay St. Louis that are just off to the east, but it looks like it's going to be right in through here is that rotation that is being picked up, moving toward the northwest, and again, it may be targeting and kind of moving the direction of the Stennis Space Center. So folks in that direction, and you can see how fast, as we get a new image here, how fast it is able to jump in just a couple of images by the radar. So in the next pass, it'll probably have already jumped I-10. Again, at 50 miles an hour, this cell is moving very, very rapidly. So these are the areas that we're talking about right now. Under the gun for a new tornado warning. As I said, it is very common with a landfalling hurricane on the eastern side, especially within kind of the northeastern quadrant of the storm. If you take a hurricane and break it up into 4 parts, the northeastern quadrant is where you get most of the tornadoes. But even as the storm does start moving inland, once we find ourselves in the southeastern quadrant, that risk is still there. And in fact, through the night tonight and even into early tomorrow, the tornado risk will actually shift from a more southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi and shift into southern Alabama and Florida. So a lot of folks, including my family, went to the Florida Panhandle. These bands, along with the rotation of the storm, will still be moving inland, and within those bands, there is still the risk of some tornadoes. So we will likely see by overnight tonight and more so into the day tomorrow, the risk of tornadoes moving a bit more to the east. But at the moment, that risk exists for basically our entire viewing area. So far, most of these indications have been seen on the Mississippi coast, as again likely starting out maybe as water spouts in the Mississippi Sound and then pushing northward once they move inland. So it looks like it not a very well-defined rotation, but we have on the National Weather Service radar are called shear markers that the radar starts to pick up that rotation and then will trigger a shear marker warning basically for the meteorologist. They'll kind of take a look at it and then decide whether or not they need to issue a warning, and this is one that they decided to issue a warning on. I can also read the text from that warning. It was near Waveland, moving northwest at, again, 50 miles per hour. So it is just moving very, very rapidly. It looks like in this latest scan, it looked like that little couplet still kind of showing up as it is now right over I-10. Just getting some new information. Actually, we're getting several wind reports from across the area as well. We'll try and kind of summarize that as we go throughout our coverage here. Looks like around Mandeville, winds have been, let's see, this is the mid portion of the causeway. of sustained winds of 54 miles an hour and gusts over the lake right now of 76 miles per hour. So we're not sustained winds even on the lake of hurricane force winds, but the winds have been gusting in excess of hurricane force winds. So the little couplet, again, of the tornado warning that we're talking about is right in through here. It looks like it is right over I-10, so right near the Stennis Space Center. So this is the spot that we're talking about. Again, thankfully, it does look like it's in a rather unpopulated part of Hancock County, so that is some good news. But the rotation that is being depicted, and what we're looking at are the colors of moving either toward or away from the radar site in Slidell, which sometimes makes it a little bit more difficult to find that little couplet, is that these storms are moving so rapidly up toward the northeast, or around the rotation, I should say, and moving around the center of a hurricane. Sometimes those little couplets are difficult to find, which is why we have something called shear markers that allows the radar to detect if there is any kind of shear showing up, and then we can issue a warning based upon that. So this warning is not going to last for too much longer, but again, if you are in its path, thankfully, kind of looking at and zooming in on our radar here, it doesn't really look like it's a very populated area. No other towns are even appearing. Looks like it is right over I-10. So in this portion, I'm going to widen out so you can get an idea of exactly where we're talking. So this is in Hancock County, well to the north of Pearlington. The warned area is going to be in, or the warning is in effect until 3:30. There's another 15 minutes or so, but I will say that this is probably going to be moving a little bit faster than that, to where this won't even be an issue in 30 minutes, as these individual cells within the bands themselves are moving at about 50 miles per hour. So they are just racing. And as I mentioned, about the time that we issue a warning, you don't have much lead time because they are moving just so quickly. And usually by the time a warning is issued, they tend not to last for very long, and by the time it expires, or shortly thereafter, it's expired and a risk is over. But always better to err on the side of caution. So here is that rotation that the radar is depicting. And by the way, here is the radar site. This is where the National Weather Service office is in Slidell. They are north of I-12, so they're in a pretty safe position where they are. Also, kind of interesting news, coming up next year, the radar site, not the National Weather Service office, the radar site will be moving to Hammond to better cover Baton Rouge. We won't have any issues here in New Orleans as far as our radar coverage, but we'll actually see the radar site move to Hammond. Just something of note as we kind of focus in on a storm that is just off to the east of the National Weather Service office. So does look like that rotation still holding together. It looked like at one pass it wasn't really showing up, but it looks like these colors have deepened, so the winds might have increased. So maybe a little bit more of a likelihood, certainly of rotation within that thunderstorm, but maybe a better likelihood of a, okay, and then they've decided to issue a new warning for that cell. Oh, they're kind of continuing it. Okay, that's why we had a new, and it's moving northwest at 60 miles an hour, so it's kind of picked up speed. So the old warning that extends down toward the coast near Shoreline Park is expired, so this is the new warning. So as I said, it still looks like that little couplet is showing up very well defined on radar, which is why the hurricane, or the National Weather Service office is going to continue this warning for the storm that is moving, again, in the direction of St. Tammany Parish, but it looks like if it were to hold together even beyond this warned area, it would be generally north of Pearl River as it were to approach I-59. Again, that's assuming that that rotation were to hold together for that long, but certainly we just got a new pass here, and that little couplet there is still showing up. So definitely going to be an issue as a, I would say, more likely tornado, as several passes have shown that rotation kind of holding together. Let's also take a look at radar as with regards to what the winds have been doing, because again, these are the velocities. This is actually what makes Doppler radar, that you're able to see winds coming to and moving away from the radar site. This is the Doppler part of it. We can not only see rain, we can not only see precipitation, we can also see wind, and boy, the wind is whipping here. So let's get an estimate of what, doesn't sound good. Is that my car? All right, let's take a look at what the winds are doing here in the city, and they are really ramping up. Now, you know, sometimes these estimates aren't perfect, but it looks like maybe sustained winds of 52 miles an hour in the city. Now, this estimate, And again, these are just estimates because this is looking at the velocities. This estimate is saying that we're already seeing winds in excess of 76 miles per hour at Destrehan. Well, let's go take a look at some of the sites and the wind speed and direction around the area and see if we can confirm if they are indeed seeing winds that strong. Okay, well, Gonzales is only reporting 24-mile-an-hour winds. Kenner only reporting 43-mile-per-hour winds, but check out these gusts, up to 62 miles an hour. Already gusting at Lakefront Airport to 72 miles an hour. So we are nearing hurricane-force wind gusts at Lakefront. And as I said, from an observation at the midpoint of Lake Pontchartrain, they were already seeing wind gusts in excess of hurricane force. We have an area that, or a graphic or map that we can see some of the metro area winds and what they are doing. I kind of wonder, these are actually these are not official National Weather Service observing stations for the most part. These are like at the Superdome at Mid-City. A lot of times these are privately owned little weather stations that we can access the data from. And just kind of looking at it, it seems like some of these aren't really, just listening to the winds here in the French Quarter, the Dome downtown to 20-mile-an-hour winds, Mid-City only at 31, only 12-mile-an-hour winds at Bywater. It certainly seems like it's a little bit stronger, and just based on radar estimates, I would have to say they do seem to be a little bit stronger than even what our map here is showing. But I want to return to our tornado warning that again has been issued for Hancock County. It'll be in effect for the next 10 minutes or so. I'm going to zoom in here. Now, when you look at it on radar, you really it's impossible to find where that rotation is. So what we do is we switch over to the velocities, and then that will give us an idea of exactly where the rotation is of this storm. And again, it is racing at 60 miles an hour. So now it is already well to the north of I-10. Looks like it may be a little bit more of a broad structure of rotation, but it definitely looks like it is still holding together as it will continue moving. And if it does hold together, we might see the Weather Service extend out that warning to maybe include parts of St. Tammany Parish that would be north of Pearl River and nearing I-59, but north of Pearl River. So it looks like that rotation is holding together, at least it has been in the last numerous passes of our radar. And you see we're getting another pass here now, so the graphic will update in just a moment, and we will see if this little couplet is holding together as it kind of approaches the western edge of the warned area, the warned polygon. But we will see if it does hold together. We might continue to see, or we might see the National Weather Service kind of extend that warning out. Once again, looking at our chat that we have going with it was located near the Stennis Space Center. At this point, again, it's moving so quickly at 60 miles an hour, it's already past the Stennis Space Center. At the point of the new warning that was issued about 5 minutes ago, it was just around and over the Stennis Space Center, about 11 miles to the west of Diamond Head. So it's definitely past there, as again, it almost looks like it's starting to kind of broaden out a little bit. So there certainly is going to be rotation within that thunderstorm. It doesn't always necessarily mean, you just saw it update again. Little couplet almost looks like it's starting to weaken a bit. So if there is definitely a broad rotation there, it's not as well defined as it was in the earlier passes when it was moving right over I-10. So it does look like that rotation is still there. Whether or not it would be enough to produce a tornado, we'll see if the National Weather Service office wants to continue this, or I should say extend it beyond with this little couplet that is moving now just about outside of the warned polygon area as it would then start to approach St. Tammany Parish, but north of Pearl River. Definitely going to have a lot of these issued throughout the course of the evening and into the night. Now, hopefully they don't amount to much of anything, but as I said, the winds usually within the tornadoes that are developed from a hurricane usually end up being an EF 0 or 1. They're usually weak and fairly short-lived. Damaging nonetheless, but they're usually on the weaker side. We're not going to see the powerful tornadoes within this. They usually tend to be a little bit weaker. And as I've pointed out, the winds associated, if this is indeed a tornado, the winds associated with it are going to be far weaker than what we are going to start to see with the center of the storm, which, as I mentioned, let's kind of zoom out once again on radar. While we're taking a kind of radar tour here, we'll widen out and look at some of the strongest winds. We were talking about wind estimates and all of our friends in Houma and Thibodaux. Let's get an estimate of what those winds are doing right now in, let's say just, because it looks like this is kind of the peak. Wow. It looks like they may be running at about 138 miles an hour around Homa at the moment, kind of estimates of 127, 108 mile per hour winds. And again, these are very rough estimates, I will say, but around Thibodaux, we can certainly expect that the winds are now in more of that destructive level, that are now approaching the Thibodaux area, moving through Homa. You see them all kind of updating as the storm continues to move up toward the northwest, that they are now getting in on some of the strongest winds associated with Ida, and that was always going to be the threat. We had talked about the track as we had followed that over the last couple of days. The little bit of a wobble one way or another really wasn't going to matter as with regards to the impacts, the wind speeds, and the surge that we would see in the, obviously starting with the surge in the lower portions of the parishes, and then the wind threat that we would see moving across the northern bayou parishes as you get into northern Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish, and then continuing up toward the river parishes. Again, for folks in the river parishes, and I do know of a lot of folks that stayed or even went to family homes in the river parishes, I'll widen out. This is headed in your direction. These strong winds of at least 100 miles per hour are going to continue along a path that will take this toward the northwest. Now, it may not be St. Charles Parish, it may not be as much St. John, but it certainly is going to be St. James, and then Ascension and Assumption as the storm kind of moves in the direction of Donaldsonville, should be weakening. And again, the wind field will be weakening. The maximum sustained winds will be weakening at that point. But we are certainly getting in on some of the strong winds here. Now, it doesn't look like, just looking at kind of the wind estimate from velocities on our radar, it does not look like this core of the strongest winds. And you can see this is the northern or western side of the eye wall, both the outer and inner eye wall. That is what is pushing through Raceland, down to Lockport, Homa, and Gray. That is moving toward Thibodaux. On the back side of that inner and outer eye wall, you find the deep greens and blue colors. That's from La Rose to Galliano and down toward the coast. So this, just looking at the winds, this isn't the radar, this isn't the precipitation presentation that you see on radar. These are the velocities. This is what we're looking at with the winds and the kind of wind structure. So the yellows and reds are moving away from the radar site. The radar site again is in Slidell. The blues and the greens are moving toward. These are moving away. So you can see that's the circulation around the center of the storm. If I change this over and show you the reflectivity that you're more accustomed to seeing when we talk about radar, there it is. So these are the core winds associated with the storm. So associated with Ida, these are the core winds on the north and western side of the eye. And then I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit and move it a little farther down. And then these are the core winds on more of the southern and eastern side of the eye. I'm going to show you that and switch back to velocities. And again, you just kind of look at the color presentation. These deeper colors, obviously they're going to be the strongest all around the center of the storm. But it looks like there's kind of a core more on the northwestern side and then another core more on the southeastern side. So this is going to be the greatest damage swath that we're going to see continue up toward the river parishes, and really more looks to be more St. James Parish as opposed to St. Charles and St. John Parish right now. That just looks to be how the storm will be trending. And we can kind of put this into motion. Now I'll switch back over to reflectivity because it is a little bit easier to see it that way, and just look at the imagery from the last hour or so. It definitely is still moving. It has slowed down a little bit. That's not what we like to see. As we've been watching this over the last couple of hours, it is still sitting basically over the more marshy areas of Lafourche and Terrebonne Parish, so it is not quite over solid land. That's why we said, or I mentioned, it made landfall, yes, but landfall in South Louisiana is kind of a loose term because there's not a whole lot of land as you get east of Theriot, south of La Rose, west of Galliano. This is still very much open marsh and open water. Now, once it starts to push a bit more inland, that's been the question everybody's been asking, when does it start weakening? Really, until the center, because the center is still able to feed off of that warm marsh water, believe it or not. It is still able to feed off of that because it is still water. It's still likely in the upper 80s, and the storm is able to kind of feed off of that. Not that it is necessarily strengthening, because it just doesn't have, has not appeared to have done that, but it certainly is going to maintain its strength. So until we see this get over real solid ground, that it loses that source of energy, there is going to be that potential that we could see it that we could see it maintain its strength, not increase, but maintain its strength. I do want to switch over. Okay, and good news is the National Weather Service expired that tornado warning. So great news that there is no longer a tornado threat for the time being at the moment. As I said, we are going to see countless of these warnings issued throughout the course of the rest of the afternoon, into the evening, and overnight. As I said, for us into the winds just really howling out here. You know, like I said, it was going to be kind of a period of being near terrifying. And we're in a very strong building, and we can clearly hear what the winds are doing outside. To be in a home, I know just earlier this morning, going up my attic to get a couple of things, you could hear the roof creaking, and it was already getting me a little bit more nervous. I said, if you wanted to stay home and you feel safe, then, you know, by all means do it. But I hope you still feel safe, because it is very rough out there. And again, just because it's scary doesn't mean you're not going to be all right, but it is going to be kind of a period here. We're closing in on some of the strongest winds moving into the city. I've been showing you some of the actual wind observations. They really don't seem to line up with certainly what we're hearing here and what our radar estimates are showing. But just again, taking a look at the wind speeds and what we have been observing here, 43-mile-an-hour wind sustained at Kenner, 51 at Lakefront Airport. Galliano right now reporting 59-mile-per-hour winds and gusting up to 81 in Notice Port Fourchon. Homa not reporting, Belle Chase not reporting, Boothville not reporting at the moment. But the wind field is certainly increasing toward the metro area, but it looks like the core of those strongest winds are really moving in a path that's going to take it west of the city, over Homa, and in fact more of the Gonzales, Baton Rouge area as it continues along a path that way. Not to say we won't see an increase in our wind speeds. They will continue to increase over the course of the next several hours in the metro area, but as far as the core of those strong winds, that looks like it's going to stay more to the west of the city.
All right, good stuff. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Chris. I know that it has been howling here in the Channel 4 studios, like Chris mentioned, and, you know, as he just said, we haven't even seen the worst of it. The French Quarter is getting just plowed by some of those really strong wind gusts.
Yeah, Nicole Kahn is in the French Quarter for us right now with an update on the awning that collapsed out there. Nicole, do you know where that awning came from?
Oh, certainly I do. And if you take a look out here, you know that these wind gusts are starting to get dangerous. If you take a look down the street, you can see that these branches have already come down. It created an obstacle for emergency vehicles, including a fire truck we saw go by, had to try to get around that to get to their destination down the street. And that awning, it came down at Decatur and Toulouse. It came off the Jackson Brewery. As it came down, it took out stoplights at Decatur Street, and then completely the debris is blocking off Toulouse Street. And you can see back out here, cars are trying to still go around the debris, the limbs in the street. So emergency officials are asking people to please, please, please stay off the roads. That's because these winds are bringing debris down. You don't know where it's going to land. You don't want it to land on you for sure. So stay off the roads until they can get them cleared. That's probably going to be at some point tomorrow. So the best thing to do is just stay where you're at. As these winds pick up, it's going to continue to bring down more and more debris. We're going to continue to be on it. Reporting from the French Quarter, Nicole Kahn.
All right, yeah, definitely. As those winds continue to whip, we are going to certainly see more damage and debris. Let's check out what we're seeing from some of our viewers out there in social media. This, you know, is just a look at some of the winds whipping through in New Orleans.
You can see that rain is fully sideways, not even coming down straight anymore.
Yeah, coming down in sheets for sure. That is a mess. This is in Homa, where we know that the eye wall is getting closer and closer to that area, where it's going to get even worse than it is. And look at that.
We've seen a lot of trees down in that area as well, in that Homa area, and now we're even seeing them into the New Orleans area too. I think this is going to be one of many for sure.
Yeah, all over Uptown we've seen some issues as well. And this is again another look in Homa. Wow, the wind is just whipping. I know in some neighborhoods we've seen some video of water in the streets that looks like it's just getting shoveled around by the sheer force of that hurricane.
And Port Fourchon, of course, which we know, this was where the storm made landfall before noon today, so this video is probably several hours old at this point, but you can just see the force of that wind bringing in the water to wherever that camera is. And we still really haven't even seen any pictures or anything from Grand Isle or Port Fourchon after landfall. It might be some time before we do, because there's no power down there, and we know that there were some people on Grand Isle in that same area who did decide to stick the storm out and asked to be rescued, but were not able.
I know. We'll have to check in with the sheriff's office to see what the situation is with that, about whether or not they were able to get to people or if they're still kind of in a holding pattern.
Well, they have a lot of people who weren't able to get out of that area, but they did say that if you couldn't leave, you had to kind of stick it out and hold it out, because you don't want to send emergency crews, and really you can't send emergency crews out in these situations. All they can do really is wait until after the storm passes and hopefully hope for the best, and hopefully everyone hunker down. I know that that's a word we hate to use, but you know, we need to find a new word, but hopefully everyone stayed put.
Look at this video. This is from Tyler Castillo. He says it's video from his buddy who's riding this out at the hospital in Houma.
Wow. I can't tell what it is, actually.
It doesn't. All I know is that looks like crazy rain getting whipped around.
I mean, from a car, maybe?
He said, I think, yeah.
He's at the hospital.
Oh, okay.
Wow, look at that.
Fort Morgan. This would be in Alabama. If that's Fort Morgan, Alabama, that's crazy. That the extent of the impacts that we're seeing from this hurricane stretch all the way from the Louisiana coast, you know, through Mississippi and into Alabama.
Yeah.
And it is so easy to focus on those places that are getting hit directly, like Port Fourchon, or even us here in New Orleans, where we are feeling the wind and everything. But I mean, as far east as Alabama.
Look at that.
Whoa. Oh my goodness.
Wow. That looks like an awning or part of some roof in a building. I don't know exactly where this is happening right now, but just replay that again, just to show you how powerful the winds are.
We heard earlier, I don't know if we're going to be up there.
There it is. Wow.
Chris was saying, you know, if you think about the hurricane force winds that we're seeing in some areas and that we're expected to see closer even to the metropolitan New Orleans area in the coming hours, that it's essentially like, actually I think it's Alexander who said this, that it's like having an EF1 tornado sitting on top of you.
Wow.
And just staying there. That's how strong some of these winds are, and you can see just the sheer force of that in some of these videos.
All right. I saw this video online before and after security camera footage over in St. Bernard Parish. Look at that.
1 hour time span.
Within an hour, just to show how fast those waters are moving. But, you know, honestly, when we listen to those news conferences, we've been here, what, maybe, Devin, you counted it, 26 hours? Listening to these news conferences and replaying what all of these parish leaders and officials said, they expected all of this to happen. They knew that this was going to happen in their individual parishes, which is why they have those mandatory evacuations. They've opened up those last-minute shelters for people. And we listened to Governor Edwards a little bit earlier. He said that there were over maybe 2,000 people, 1,542 people that are in shelters across the state, and 23 different shelters. And based on what you're seeing right here, this is why he believes those numbers are going to go up. And also with the number of power outages that we're seeing, not only across our parish, but surrounding parishes, we may see more people having to go to shelter when they come out on the other end of the storm.
Yeah, in the next few days, especially when people start to come back who even evacuated, who come back and find out that they've got significant damage. Now, this video that you're